We've got here an almost original 61 Princeton, like you do. And I'll show you this stuff down at the other end. There's been some changes to the bias supply. Other than that, it all looks pretty stock. What's interesting to me is that here, some original cathode bypass caps, according to the schematic in every 61 and similar 6G2 Princeton I've seen, the schematic calls for a 25 microfarad, 25 volt cap. They've got 200 microfarads. This one's 50, this one's 25 volts. Apparently just whatever the factory had, so they popped them in. This one's bubbling. This one's probably not any good anymore either. And then some Astrons, and this Astron here is leaking 180 millivolts. I'm sure the other two are leaking as well. This one's easier to measure because it's just tied straight to the cap. From the cap straight to the volume pot, so it's just a 1 meg to ground there. The amp's got a pretty good hum to it. It's got the original filter cap, so I'm sure that once all the electrolytics are changed out, that issue will go away. Here's what it sounds like at this point with just a Strat straight in. So overall, quite good, though it does have that hum. Still has the original 2-prong power cable, still has the depth cap. All the heaters are, one side of the heaters is to ground, the other side is actually using the secondary. I'll talk to the owner if he wants me to make it a true biphase heater supply. But usually once all the filter caps are sorted out, these things can be nice and quiet, even with the suboptimal heater arrangement. You can see here someone's put in a very high quality trim pot for the bias, but it's very flimsily mounted because this fairly large body is mounted with just 3 little bitty standoffs, 3 little leads, 2 of which are going to the eyelet there, 1 of which is going to this resistor, and it just doesn't have any real mechanical support. So it's a high quality part, but I don't think it was used very well. We can put in something that'll do the same thing, be equally quality for the job, and be much smaller. And you can see that underneath the old cardboard tube, there's just an F&T, probably 100 microfarad there, which is a fine cap to use. I don't personally like it when they carve up the old cardboards and slip them back over. If you're going to do that, try to do a neater job than this and maybe get some silicone or something in there so it doesn't move as much, but I think it's silly. Anyway, it's going to get redone when I do everything else. Given the poor quality of multi-section cannon cap replacements on the market today, I'd like the owner's permission to leave this physically in here so there's not a big hole in the chassis and it looks vintage from the outside, and use some standoffs, maybe even reusing the same holes, if not 2 new ones here to make some standoffs, put a little tag board and get some modern radials on there, be much higher quality. These caps have lasted a really long time, but the amp's got a pretty noticeable hum as soon as it's powered on. And it is time. It is past time for for 1961. That's a long time ago. Got an old RCA 5Y3. It's got a pair of new Electro-Harmonix 6V6s in very good shape. The hum's not from the tubes being mismatched. It's got a Tungsol 12X7 here and a GE here. Neither are probably original to the amp, but both are period correct. All right, let's talk about these yellow Astrons. Same goes for the red Astrons. There's a reason Fender stopped using the Astrons in general and moved over to these Ajax molded caps. They always develop leakage. This one here, let me move the meter so you can see it. This wire is going to the volume pot, so it's just got a 1 meg load to ground, and it should have 0 volts DC here, and it's got 168, 169, 170 millivolts. So it's not the worst I've seen. I've seen these things leak like 12 volts DC, but it's enough to show that that cap's on its way out. This one because it's at the input of the phase inverter, which is a cathodine, and this one because it's in the tremolo circuit, and it's normal to have fluctuating voltage there in a tremolo, and it's fluctuating between positive and negative, which tells me this may not be any damn good, to the point where it's not even worth lifting these 2 caps out of circuit and putting a 1 meg to ground just to test that, they're going to be bad to some degree. They're not trustworthy, and they have no magic sound. So away they go. So let's start the removal process, and I'll show you how I do this as much as I can with the camera here. So I'm waiting for the beep, so the iron's hot. Flow some solder there. See if that'll just lift out now. Yep. And I always make sure that I don't burn the yellow cloth. Sometimes the best way to do that is once the solder is melting, to physically remove it, because I can always put it back. That way it doesn't get burned in the process. Hopefully you heard that. I moved the mic now. That's the trouble with doing this. Sometimes I hunch over to see things better, and I forget that the microphone is now pointing behind my head, etc. You can see some darkening on the board here. Hopefully you can see that. That's moisture in the board, which is evaporating. It's just kind of leaching out from the eyelet area, spreading away from the heat. Now, on the negative side of things, let me flip the chassis around, move the camera, and show you what I'm talking about. Again, I want to flow some fresh solder just to get some flux added to it. You can just dab on a little bit of liquid flux, but I find that invariably adds a little bit too much and makes for a messier cleanup. So just a small amount of flux contained in this new solder usually does the trick. Now these Astrons will just pull up. And in a minute, we'll test them and see what they actually measure as far as capacitance goes. But the real thing is the way Fender built these amps. The negative lead of these filter caps is also the wire going to chassis. And if I were to take this and snip it real close, in future work, this could pull out, and it's really hard to put back. So what I do is I'm like, this cap is toast. This cap has served its role. It's no longer a capacitor that anyone should be able to use. So I snip them, and then I have that lead, and once the solder's out, I can bend that lead back and do a J-hook so that this cannot come out, and that becomes even more secure than it ever has been. Let me get some of this excess solder out, and I'll show you on this one. Then once I have this bent over, I'm going to snip off that little bit of excess and leave a nice little hook there for mechanical strength. Now on this one, it's a little tricky to bend this back because this resistor lead and this resistor lead are between it and the back. So what I'll do is gently lift each one up. Now I can put these back. If I need to get any slack or excess out, I can. Sometimes, like this one was hooked underneath the board a little bit, I'll go ahead and loosen the hardware holding the board in place so I can lift the board up a little bit and kind of snug them back. It's not something you have to do on every amp you ever work on. But when you have a 61 Princeton, you know, the bar can be a little bit higher. There's not that many components in the amp, so a little bit of extra labor per component can be justified. See, that one was hooked underneath as well. And I know when I come back with the lead of the new cap, it'll snake right in here. And be good as new. You may have noticed that sometimes it's taken me 2 or 3 or more shoomps with the solder sucker to get all the solder out. There can be an awful lot of solder in one of these eyelets because it can pool between the two boards, and I like to get it all out when I need to get it out. I need to get it all out. Anyway, we are ready for some new cathode bypass caps. I only have one new cap in terms of the 22s, so I'll get some more of those ordered. No big deal. You're not going to have all this magically done in this one. I've got to talk to the owner about the filter cap changes. But it's so nice to be able to do work and have things nice and clean. Now, before I put anything back, I don't have all the parts to put back. I've got the 2 cathode bypass caps and at least one of the 22s. I saw that moisture that was stored in this board that came out to an extent when I was soldering. So I like to drive out as much of that moisture as possible. So I'll let some ISO get in there, and the eyelets I'll heat up. The rest of the ISO that's on top, I'll wipe up the excess. It'll carry off a lot of dirt with it. What's left will evaporate. But here around the eyelets, the alcohol expands out into the board and drives out the water that might be in that area because alcohol pushes out water. It's a rock, paper, scissors kind of thing. And then once it pushes the water out, especially with some help from heat, all the rest of the ISO evaporates. You can see the concentric rings spreading out from the eyelets when I do this. And some steam. It's technically not necessary in every location, like this ground. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit conductive. But any place where you can get DC leaking, because DC doesn't just leak through caps, especially with these old fiber boards. For me, it's best practice. I have it open, and I know that doing this can yield benefits, and now is an easy time to do it. It doesn't take long to do. A lot of the work I do that may seem miraculous as far as bringing an old amp back is not because I'm doing anything magical or mojo or anything. It's because I'm willing to be a non-glorified janitor. This is boring to do. People don't want to do this. This is not why we ever get into guitar or amps or anything. But this makes a difference. Now you'll note I was kind of careful not to get the isopropyl on the white paper labels of those Blue Ajax caps. If a little bit gets on there, it's not the end of the world. It evaporates, and usually you can't see, but they can be discolored. And I don't want to do that. But you can't discolor these resistors or the yellow wire. Anything that gets in those, any alcohol that gets in those will evaporate right off. Just leave behind a cleaner bit of wire and a cleaner resistor. So this is just getting some of the dirt off the board in this area. The rest will evaporate up. And I'll show you a pro tip. When you do that, when you pour alcohol onto one of these things and you have eyelets that are open or you have screws that are removed, some alcohol gets between the two boards and takes longer to evaporate. So I'll get in there and just kind of make an air gap. Where's my other one? I've got 3 of these damn things. Here's one. I'll just make an air gap to hasten the evaporation. Oops, as it shoots across the room. And I'll let that sit for about 15-20 minutes, and all will be well. While all that is drying, I'll take this paper towel with a little bit of ISO on it and get some of this oxidation off these wires. These are the speaker wires. Not sure why some plastics get this gunk and some don't, but I mean, it doesn't hurt the plastic as far as I can tell, but it doesn't look that pretty. And I'll tell you from experience, when someone owns a 61 anything, whether it's this or a Corvette, they want it to look pretty. There are guys out there detailing their engines on this Sunday afternoon. So think of that as what I'm doing. I'm just cleaning the engine blocks while I'm at it. Well, thanks for tuning in for another edition of This Old Amp. I've been your host, Lyle. And as always, thanks for watching.